Hi, and welcome to the 13th edition of the International Conference of Education, Research and Innovation 2020. Due to reasons we all know, unfortunately, only online and we can't meet in person. My name is Alexander Pfeiffer. I'm a postdoc fellow at MIT, associated researcher at Donau-University Krems, and a PhD candidate at the University of Malta. My colleagues are Simone Kriglstein from the Austrian Institute of Technology and University of Vienna, Stephen Bezzina from the Ministry of Education in Malta, König and Wernbacher from Donau-University Krems, Dingli and Vella from the University of Malta. And our topic is blockchain technologies as data storage for test results and certificates, the human factor. As we all know, blockchain, if working in a proper way, should ensure objectivity and trust in a secure way. It should be transparent so that we have a look into the transaction, but still also ensuring privacy, as you can, of course, encrypt the information that is related to the transaction itself. And with smart contracts, automatic handling of processes should be possible. And of course, the ownership of data. So in a true decentralized system, you can give the ownership of data back to the people, so to say. But there's one missing point in most of the research projects that we see in the journals and conferences. We always talk about how blockchain technologies can help regarding the errors of humans and to ensure trust between different parties. But what we leave out in most of the papers and discussions is that while blockchain technologies is a perfect tool to secure data itself, there's still always humans who are responsible for actually producing the core part of the data. For example, here in our field, education, it's still a very social way how we grade. We have verbal exams, we have homeworks that we grade, and so on and so forth. And at the end, it's humans, it's professors, teachers that decide about the grades. So our research question is basically, which kind of errors can occur through human interventions, and how can such errors be corrected when blockchain technologies are used? So we conducted a focus group, and of course, before that, extensive desk research. So what are the results? Bribing or other reasons to achieve better test results. This means that, as I said before, it's still a very social process. So if someone wants to get a better grade and it's still possible, for example, to pay for that better grade maybe. Of course, it's very tricky to ask a professor, but there might be some professors who are open-minded for bribing and for faking certificates. We have the examples mentioned in the focus groups from the SAT results in the US, and maybe you also read about it in the media. And there was just last week before we conducted the focus group, this example of a football player who wanted to pass his test in Italian, and he wanted to know the questions beforehand. Thankfully, some of those bribing approaches are detected, but others are maybe not. Examinations taken by another person, for example, with the help of a ghostwriter. So for example, if you create a written homework, and then you put the results on homepage, you put the results on the blockchain, there might still be the possibility that behind this homework there was a ghostwriter. And of course, there are possibilities to find out if it's really written by the particular person. But in most of the cases, professors receive a homework and grade it. So basically, although we are using blockchain systems to put grades on blockchain, we still cannot be sure who is actually the author of a particular exercise. Faulty programming of the blockchain systems or underlying smart contracts. So that was a really good approach from our focus group, saying that recently more and more smart contracts appeared with code that had malfunctions. So transactions were blocked, for example. Some people lost their funds. And it's very hard for a regular person to understand the smart contracts and to review them. And as the main goal is that blockchain technologies are used by everyone, of course, not everyone is a high-class programmer and can review code him or herself. So we have to trust the reviewers. We have to trust people that go on GitHub and other platforms and have a look at the code and actually review the code and find malfunctions, give feedback, so that they're actually only running products and running smart contracts, running blockchain platforms out there. And the smaller the blockchain platform used regarding the community, the higher might be the chance that reviewers are not finding issues. And on the other hand, some of those blockchain platforms exist due to speculative hype. We learned from the focus groups, and there maybe reviewers are even bought, like the stars at Amazon, and to say the code is okay, especially if they just contribute with a nickname. You might never be sure if the reviews are in a decent way. So we, the normal folks, have to trust the reviewers, and we have to trust those who write the smart contracts and the code of the blockchain platform itself. Identity theft through social engineering or hacks. So even if the grading process is not is fraudulent, not because the person got bribed, it could still be possible that a hacker or a fraudulent person, a thief, got access to the credentials, to the keys of someone who has the rights to put grades for someone and certificates on blockchain. So this is always an issue. Incorrect handling due to lack of knowledge how blockchain works. So of course, if the systems that will be used in education, in our case, in a broad way from a lot of institutions, the more complicated the user interfaces, the higher is the risk that that you, for example, broadcast the wrong transaction to the blockchain or do another error. Input errors due to carelessness. So if I'm an underpaid administrator, if I'm overworked or whatever, there is a lot of room for errors. Insecure forwarding of data via email or off-chain systems. So basically if, for example, a professor tells the grade to his or her assistant, then the assistant forwards the grades via email. The emails could be easily hacked. Or if I use other learning management systems beforehand, I put my gradings there, and then I transmit it to the department that is then responsible for for putting the grades into a blockchain-based grading system. There are a lot of attack vectors to be found there, and that to manipulate the unsecured transactions itself. And then the most important part from the discussions is the management of private keys and the problem of centralized lock-in systems. So pure blockchain would mean that every user has its own private key, its own secret that he has to hide somewhere self and never tell somebody else, and that cannot be replicated. But this would mean that for each officer, if he or she loses the key, the access to the system would be gone. For each user losing the key, the access to prove that this are his or her grades would be gone. So we're still at the time where we might need systems by third parties, authorized maybe by the authorities, working together with digital ID providers from the authorities, so that on the one hand we have the storing of the grades in a decentralized way on blockchain, but on the other hand we have the users maybe on a private blockchain, maybe using centralized platforms by certain providers accredited by the government. So the conclusion is that we, as the authors and also the participants from the focus group, say that we have to find out more about where the humans play a role and the users play a role in blockchain. So sociologists need to work more with technicians hand in hand to actually work on the products that will be used in some years in real life on the market. And that might even be the reason why there are not so many actual use cases out there, not in education. Of course, with block certs, we have one famous example, but blockchain is still a niche at a certain point, not from a research perspective, but in practice. So thank you very much. We are quite a big consortium, and of course you can reach out to me. You find my email address on the internet site of Donau-University, for example, and other colleagues. And I would love to connect you with my colleagues and that we discuss the subject further. And I also linked here my ResearchGate net. So I hope you enjoyed the conference, and I'm looking forward to discuss the topic with you further.